Hello and namaste. On this pleasant morning after yesterday's lunar observance day in the traditional Buddhist calendar, the new moon of September, the dark moon, which also marks the halfway point through this 3-month Vasa. The Vasa being the monastic's 3-month rains retreat, when we stay in one place for the monsoon season, as it actually is here in India, the monsoon season, for practical reasons, and throughout the rest of the world, out of tradition, a time for reflection or study or projects, and often a time when we make determinations. Adhitanas is the Pali word for determination. Another of these lists I quote quite often, it seems, the parami. The parami being qualities, not an actual list straight from the Buddha, as in some of the lists, many of these lists. The Four Noble Truths, Noble Eightfold Path, 7 Factors of Enlightenment, 4 Foundations of Mindfulness, 3 Faculties of Existence, and so on. This one has been contrived, put together subsequently, but each quality taken from different places throughout the suttas. So still very significant and a very useful reference point in terms of marking, understanding, looking at our development. And very often one will pick maybe one of these qualities for the Vasa to develop, or take an adhitthana, for instance, make a determination to do something. Maybe learn a particular passage of chanting. Maybe if you were very brave, learn to recite the entire Patimokkha. This being the list of rules, the 227 Bhikkhu training rules, that is what we get together on those lunar observant days as bhikkhus in our designated place, the sima, which is the authorized place for all ceremonies like ordinations, and this particular recitation of the what is called in Pali the Patimokkha, our 227 rules or precepts, a bit of an extension on your, if you're a lay Buddhist, 5 precepts, but reflective of those and supportive of those. I don't really see them as an addition, I see them as the supporting training structure for maintaining the 5 precepts. Because even when you extend the 5 precepts, as many lay people do on these lunar observance days, to 8 precepts, which is the 5 being no killing or refraining from killing, refraining from stealing, refraining from sexual misconduct, refraining from lying, refraining from intoxicants. Now, if you want to, on the lunar observance days, extend your precepts for, say, 24 hours as part of your practice, the reason for doing this is to assist in your practice of the development of meditation, samadhi, and also wisdom, panya. Because our practice is SILA, moral virtue, these 5 precepts, samadhi, meditation, and panya, wisdom. This is what we do as Buddhists. We don't pray and worship. It might seem a little like that sometimes when we're bowing to statues. This is just a mindful way of reminding ourselves of the teacher, a human being whom is long dead, but what remains is his legacy, his teachings. The Dharma, we call this. Now the Dharma is also all things. All things are dharmas, all conditioned things and unconditioned things. Results of nature are dharma, as well as the teachings of the Buddha, Dharma. I think Dharma with a capital D, the teachings of the Buddha. Dharma with a small d, all things, nature, if you like. And we also bow to the Sangha. Not me, I'm a monk, so I'm part of the Sangha, but what I represent and what all bhikkhus dressed in these robes, what these robes represent. So when lay people, upasakas, upasikas, are bowing to me, they're not bowing to this in here, this person, whom used to be Mr. So-and-so from the UK. They're bowing to the Sangha, what I represent, what this uniform is representative of. And what it is representative of is that SILA, samadhi, and panya. Also, it is representative of, as the Sangha, what lay people can take refuge in prior to taking their 5 precepts or extending them to 8 precepts. Take refuge in the Buddha, as I've just described, our teacher, the Dharma, his teachings, and the Sangha, we call the Triple Gem. And this is done by repeating after someone like me, a bhikkhu, a monk, or a nun, a bhikkhuni, the Pali words of Buddham Saranam Gacchami, Dhammam Saranam Gacchami, Sangham Saranam Gacchami, which is I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, I take refuge in the Sangha. Refuge, why? Because this is our protection, where we go for security. If we had nothing else, it is what remains in our hearts. You'll often maybe have experienced yourself or seen when people are in a very disastrous situation or fearful situation. Well, please God, help. This happens. Now in Buddhism, we don't have God to pull us out of trouble. We don't have God to give us good fortune. But we have this refuge, this real thing. A real man who died leaving these real teachings, and what's very important, this bhikkhu and bhikkhuni sangha to continue these teachings to today, 2566, maybe 7, I'm a little mixed up on my dates and years now, years later, but a long time, intact, unchanged, including those 227 bhikkhus rules, unchanged throughout those millennia. Unlike any rule book in the world of any organisation ever in existence, even constitutions of countries have come and gone, constitutions have come and gone, governments have come and gone, clubs, associations, societies have been established and broken up and disappeared. Rules within them have changed probably annually, biannually or quarterly at their AGMs, their meetings, their get-togethers, just to adapt to changes in the world, changes in the locality, in the society, changes in their membership. All these little rules get amended accordingly. even probably Baden-Powell's Boy Scouts or the Girl Guides. I think they've probably changed their rules once or twice. The armies of our countries, the police forces, big books of regulations on how to do things, continually amended. But what hasn't changed in all this time, since they were laid down or put down in writing some 4, 5, again, I'm not very good on these dates. I failed my history exams, I think, or maybe got a scrape through on pass. Before they were laid down in writing, the Buddha's teachings, during his teaching time, 45 years of teaching, he established these rules, not just for the sake of it, but as problems occurred in the development of the Sangha, as he developed his following of monks and nuns, bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, and they encountered various difficulties, as living as samanas, as renunciants, as sole practitioners, or in the group with other monks together in a community, because these are the options to live within a monastery in a community, or alone under a tree, in a cave, in an empty hut, or just in the open air. I kind of take the latter three. I like the open air, the empty hut, the cave, or under a tree, the root of a tree. Actually, I'm not so keen on caves, but that's another story. They're damp and musty, smelly, and they get used for not so pleasant things sometimes. So these rules that were established were to protect us as monks, as bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, both physically, emotionally, mentally, but also keep our virtues, our morality, those actual 5 precepts, which can be summed up in doing no harm to either ourselves or to others or any other beings, or really even the planet itself, because it's all us. Nature is just 4 elements: solidity, liquidity, gas, solidity, so earth, liquidity, water, gas, which is air, and fire, which is temperature. It can be represented, seen, felt, experienced as temperature, not just burning flame. So these 4 elements that make up this planet make up ourselves. And we have in Buddhism the addition, not addition because they're still there, but we recognize through Buddhism that there is also space for these elements to exist, because nothing can exist without space to exist in, and it is also the container. The elements contain space in order to have their form as we see it, as it's representative, whether it's either earth, water, wind or gas, or fire. It has space within its molecular atomic structure. So there is that, and then there is, of course, consciousness, our knowing. Because if we are not conscious of these elements, then, well, are they there? They need to be consciously aware of. As we are consciously aware, continuously, of this body, made of these elements we are in, where we abide, and the environment surrounding us, which we see and is representative by simply what we're seeing: light, hearing, sounds, smelling, odours, tasting, flavours, the things we're feeling. I can feel something crawling on me at the moment. This is feeling, touch, and thinking, how we're thinking about these things. And this is our conscious awareness of the bodily, materialistic nature. But in addition to that is something we call in our tradition the citta, but that which knows. And it is that which knows that is the continuation, that remains unchanged. However much our lives change, from moment to moment, day to day, year to year, decade to decade, lifetime to lifetime, this citta, this knowing, remains continuously the same. And you can see that for yourself. When you were a child, you were a child. Probably very different to how you are now as an adult. But what knew when you were a child, is the same and remains the same as now what knows you are an adult. Now you are an adult. Isn't that so? So we, as bhikkhus, with the responsibility to continue this legacy of Dharma from our teacher, the Buddha, with whom you've taken refuge in the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, have a huge responsibility to maintain the moral virtues of those five precepts. And all of these extra 202 precepts on top of those, if you like, so our 227 precepts, ensure that we are supported in such a way that we are unable to digress. I mean, for instance, there are so many rules within the 227 Bhikkhu training rules pertaining to our relationships with the opposite sex and the company we keep and the restrictions as to, for instance, as a monk, as a male, I cannot be in the company of a female alone, without another bhikkhu or how would you say, chaperone, put it that way, someone else present. Now, this isn't because I'm untrusted, but it is an extra layer of protection to keep that third precept of sexual misconduct. Now, when you extend the 5 precepts to 8 precepts, the third precept changes to celibacy, so no sexual activity whatsoever. So all monks and nuns whom have taken upasampada, higher ordination, and therefore have the 227 precepts have extended beyond the 8 precepts, but of course the third precept means that we are celibate. And these extra rules within the Patimokkha, the extra 227 rules, a lot of them are to help us keep that celibacy intact, protecting us and protecting others, because this is always the case with no harm. It's very important to always ensure that it begins with yourself, because you need to ensure that you do no harm to yourself in order that you can ensure that you do no harm to others. For instance, on an aeroplane, when the air thing comes down, when the aeroplane's crashing, they always say, make sure you put your oxygen mask on before you try to help others. Why? Because if you don't, you can't help others, you'll die. So this is just an example of how we must ensure that we do ourselves no harm in order that we don't, by that neglect, do others harm. Then we can help others, but we can also do no harm. The greatest gift we can give, the gift of dana. Dana is another of these parami, the first, and it is giving. The one I forgot when I listed them the other day was kanti, patience, sometimes translated as patience, patient endurance. But maybe I'll just do a talk on just the parami one day when I'll remember them all in the same go. I can remember them now, but we won't go into that. So this third precept, when you take 8 precepts, becomes celibacy. So if you take 8 precepts for one day as a lay person on the lunar observance day, you will refrain from sexual activity rather than refrain from sexual misconduct. This is to ensure that your mind, your attention is 100% on your practice of keeping these moral virtues and practicing meditation. And then we practice meditation, samadhi and vipassana, so focusing on one single-pointed focusing on one meditation object to develop these wonderful, relaxing states of absorption, and also seeing clearly, which is what Vipassana translates as seeing clearly this experience as we're meditating, this bodily experience we call life and existence, really witnessing and experiencing the nature of that, the characteristics of this existence, which is another thing that is very simple to remember, but very deep to understand. But when you really know it, you cannot unknow it. And that is this anicca, impermanence, being the first of these three characteristics of existence. Dukkha, which is unsatisfactoriness, or sometimes translated as suffering. And anatta, which is not self. Not no self, because we are here, we have a name, we represent something, albeit continually changing through our lives. But that which knows isn't changing. So this is why we say not self. What I am now, what you see now, representing this Sangha as a monk, is just that. What I was as a child was just that, and as a businessman, just that. But what new was not what I am, but what continues, what is unconditioned, and therefore what is deathless. But what is dead is the child I was, what is dead is the businessman I was, and what will be dead is the monk I am. Either if I disrobed and became a pop star, it's unlikely, or if I drop dead tomorrow, which can happen. Either way, this is dead. But if I'm a pop star tomorrow, the monk is dead, but what knows I'm a pop star is still alive and kicking and dancing around on stage. Oh dear, where did I come up with that idea from? As you can tell, I don't plan these things. So, because I've just been chanting, I was enjoying it so much, I'm getting more. My determination at the beginning of this Vassa was to, same last year, but I had people with me. I had upasakas coming every day for chanting. So I was chanting every day, evening puja, anyway. But here I don't have anyone else. Occasionally one of the other monks might come in, but I'm alone. So I thought I'll make the determination, and adhitthana, this is just for discipline and training, to still do morning puja and evening puja every morning and every evening at the same time, as if I was in a monastery with lots of other people. As it happens, I make them live on this YouTube, which wasn't really planned, but that's the way it's happened, because there's internet in the air here. That way, I'm not really alone, because some people do get to see the chanting. It's become apparent. But regardless of that, at the beginning it was a bit shaky. Then I decided to say, we'll do it in English and Pali, for my own benefit, as well as others people watching, once I saw people were watching, because then we are listening to the Pali teachings of the Buddha, which is what this chanting is. You see, I said it's not praying or worship, it is the repetition of the teachings of the Buddha, also paying homage to the Buddha and the Dharma and the Sangha. So it's mindful representation of Buddhism and its teachings, and us reinforcing that learning through the experiential practice of chanting and a little bowing. So this I determined to do, and I'm starting to quite enjoy it now, because it is a good time for reflection, chanting a different sutta each day about the different qualities of the Buddha, the Dharma, Sangha each day, and some teaching each day, and some reflections each day, and then repeating them in my own mother tongue of English, is really reinforcing, even in myself after all these years, what I'm talking to you about. So that's the third precept. Now also, when you've taken refuge and you want to extend your precepts to 8 precepts, the 6th precept is you would refrain from eating after midday, noon, or when the sun is at its meridian. I say that because in the UK I think they eat up until 1 o'clock, because their clocks are put forward artificially 1 hour in the summertime, British summertime, in order that lay people have still time to prepare food and bring it to the monastery. I tell myself just to keep it to 12 o'clock wherever I am. If I have a clock, if not, you can sort of go by the sun, but you do need to check the time. But not to eat afternoon. Why? Because you can eat sufficiently enough in the morning. Now, as my own practice, I just eat 1 meal a day, 1 sitting, in 1 bowl, all together, mixed up, not separate plates and courses, not sweet and savoury. I have it all together in 1 bowl. But that's another additional Dhutanga practice of mine, which is another subject indeed, but I just have 1 meal. But it's quite okay for even monks to have breakfast and then a lunch, if you like, but before lunchtime, before noon, and lay people also. But you could restrict it to 1. Now, the point of it is, just eating the 1 meal takes a lot of your daily activities away. Most of our daily activities are around preparing food, eating food, clearing up after eating food, and the rest of our daily activities are revolved around talking about, thinking about, and buying food. And then when we're not doing all of that in relation to food, we're trying to earn money to pay for food. So if you take all of two of those meals, 2/3 of that away, you take away 2/3 of that activity, leaving you a lot of time for the practice of sila, samadhi, panya, primarily samadhi meditation. Okay? So that's why we don't eat afternoon. And you'll find, wow, that's great, what do I do now? What next? What happens? I've got nothing to look forward to. That's the point. This is where you let go. And you just sit. And you watch the breath. And you meditate. And then in addition to that, you take the 7th precept, which is no entertainment. It's also no beautification and no adornments, so no jewelry, no makeup. You don't need to do your hair. Just keep it simple. Wear some simple clothes. Stay in your pajamas as long as they're decent, and clean and tidy. You're not going out. Stay at home. If you're going out, simple clothes, but you don't need to dress up. No perfumes, no scents, none of this stuff. It's not necessary. So we refrain from that. That is usually the 8th precept when you extend the precepts to 10 precepts. Because if you go to live in a monastery as an anagarika, the first stage of leading towards novice ordination in the monastic, in the sangha, before you become a monk, you go forth into homelessness, which is what anagarika means, homeless one. You also you take 1 extra precept, because the 8 become 9 by splitting that perfume and beautification from entertainment and adding you cannot use money or touch it. Specifically refrain from handing gold and silver, but it really means using money. So you then become fully dependent on the sangha and the lay people. But back to the 7th, it also includes entertainment, so you turn your phone off, unless you're listening to a Dharma talk or reading suttas, or making this video. In fact, I kept mine off yesterday, because I didn't need it. I had to put it on for the car that was coming to pick me up and delivery. I had to use Uber yesterday to go to Bangalore, because I'm sure you'll know what that is. I think they have it in every country, but they also have it in India, because this going on the bus, the metro's okay for a monk, But the bus from here to the metro, the time I have to go is very, very busy, and I don't think it's appropriate for a monk. I have to take my pindapart and all these things with me, and my robes are all properly on. And even though I take a samanera with me to help, you get pushed and shoved all up and down. So for a little extra money, I can get an Uber car all the way to the monastery. It picks me up here and takes me there. Now, fortunately, some kind people had made some donations, so online, without handling money, that 10th precept, I was able to book an Uber car. I was also running late, so it was going to be a bit difficult, and I wasn't going to take the samanera with me. So it seemed best, the way of avoiding using money, and to certainly avoid being touched by all kinds, let alone women, on the bus. When I say touched, I'm not being funny about that. We have a rule, we're not to touch women or be close proximity with them. It's all part of this way of protecting us and you, us from you and you from us, and maintaining this strict moral adherence to this third precept of celibacy, but it's deeper than just celibacy. It's any inappropriate flirtation or behaviour or innuendo when it comes to monks. It's very much expanded upon. Don't worry about that for lay people. It's purely sexual misconduct, as in I've described many times before, I'm sure. So the 7th precept becomes also no entertainment. So you don't listen to music or watch whatever it is these days, probably still Netflix, is it? Or even YouTube if it's not me, or some monks, or Dharma talks, let's say. But even really try to refrain from that. I mean, restrict listening to Dharma talks maybe to just one, and reflect upon it. Don't be flicking through one to the next, to the next, to the next, and then just looking at the ones you like, because then this is really taking Dharma into the realms. It's better than, say, I don't know, whatever else there is on YouTube. But it's better to just watch one, listen mindfully, then meditate, or think about it, reflect, not be flicking through. See, I have seen on the bus people looking at their phones and they don't seem to look at anything for very long. It's like this. So the bus, I've decided I'm going to try, and the Uber thing works quite well. So I had to put my phone on for that. Other than that, I was able to turn it off. Oh, and I used it for, we have to do a little recitation at the beginning of the Patimokkha. I needed to check in my chanting book. Otherwise than that, I was largely undisturbed. I'm always undisturbed because the sound is switched off and I have all the notifications off. And ordinarily, most often, it's also on aeroplane mode, just to make sure it doesn't annoy me. But I have times in the day to catch up with it, catch up with things. This is how I reply to all your wonderful comments and emails, which are very useful, thank you. And what support this channel, mainly. This is what this channel is about, answering your inquiries that I can only relate to my own experience, from being a layperson to becoming and now being a monk. So the 8th precept, the 7th precept, you refrain from entertainment and beautification and these kind of adornments. And then the 8th is, it's about sleeping in a high and luxurious bed specifically. But for the day as a layperson, I would say bring that into the realm of sofas. Don't laze on the sofa all day. Sit on the floor like this, or on a cushion, or however you sit to meditate, and maintain sitting, standing, walking, the 4 postures you can use for meditation. But rather than when you're sitting, lazing around, use it as time to be sitting, at least even if you're not meditating, in this posture. As I'm talking to you now, I'm not sort of leaning back. I mean, I'm not meditating, but I'm in this meditation posture because it's how I sit. I've got used to it. But you can adapt and get used to it also, because it means you're awake, alert, upright. It is actually much more comfortable eventually when you get used to it. I need no cushions, no chairs, no sofas, no beds. I sit like this, I sleep on the floor like this. And before I started this practice, I couldn't do that. And it was very painful when I had to first sit on the floor, on a concrete floor. And I wasn't young, I was in my 40s. So well, that is young now, I suppose, because I'm now in my 50s. I'm getting on now. But I wasn't a 20-year-old. So anyone sort of in their 20s and 30s who's finding it impossible to be sitting on the floor like this and sleeping on the floor, well, think about it. It's not impossible. If some 40-year-old English person, and we're not used to the culture of being ever sitting on the floor, because it's more an Asian thing where people like to sit on the floor than a Western cultural thing where we're always in chairs or at tables. So, and I eat like this. So you maintain those postures. So this is really what that eighth precept is about. Mindfully not lazing around in comfortable seats and sofas and chairs and this, sitting appropriately as if you're meditating all of the time. And this is then the opportunity to really, as you see, those additional 3 precepts are not really anything to do with morality. If you listen to music, if you sleep in a comfortable bed, if you put some makeup and perfume on, if you, that's it. You're not really doing anything wrong, are you? But what they do, like our rest of our 227 rules, what they do is they help you keep the 5 precepts. Now likewise, the 5th precept of intoxicants. It isn't illegal or morally wrong in most places to drink alcohol, for example. But it's included in those 5 because it can lead to being a little less mindful of the other 4 precepts. Now, just saying this, I can see the comments and the arguments coming in. But if you're honest with yourself, you go on a date, what do? You have a bottle of wine, a few drinks to give you courage to progress the relationship further. Why? Because you're less mindful after a few drinks. Your inhibitions have gone. Now in meditation, in this Buddhist practice, we don't want to create inhibitions and build anxiety, but we want to increase our awareness and our mindfulness so that we don't make mistakes. We do everything seeing clearly. It's what insight or vipassana means. It's not so much insight, it's seeing clearly what we're doing and how we're behaving in all our acts of body, speech and mind. So that one glass of wine just to take the edges off or soften the atmosphere, make it a little easier, is just dampening mindfulness. So in the wording, it's refrain from intoxicants which lead to heedlessness, the opposite of being heedful or mindful or careful. So however much you think it's okay to have one glass of wine, of course it can lead to another, but even one is taking away a little bit of mindfulness and therefore is not supporting those first 4 critical, no harm of killing, stealing, sexual misconduct or lying precepts. So that's, I've spoken of before. Wasn't what I was going to talk about, but I had nothing particularly in mind. But it's a reminder at this, to me, significant time marker, because really the lunar calendar is my calendar. The Vassa is the only time of year when I am in one place and am obliged to be in one place. I do usually, and have, it seems, has worked out, I'm in a different place to where I'm always in a different place. And I was actually thinking about this when I heard a question someone was asking of another monk, or they were talking about a question they were asking of another monk of where is your home? And the monk thought it was a funny question. And I understand why, because if you ask me where is my home, I asked myself this question yesterday, where is your home, monk, English monk? Well, I might be English monk, but my home is really not really in England. I haven't been in England now for, I haven't been full time in England for quite some years, but officially living in England, I haven't been there for over 3 years now, albeit one quick visit. So I can't really say it's my home. It's where I come from, maybe. And here in India, I don't live in any one particular place. And in Thailand, yes, I stayed in one particular place, but I'm not there now. Cambodia, I'm all over the place, but actually where my home is, the true sense of the word, is in that refuge. This refuge you take, Buddham Saranam Gacchami. I take refuge in the Buddha. A refuge is also a home, yes? You have a women's refuge. I'm not being sexist, I don't know if there's men refuges, maybe there are, for, say, ladies who have an unfortunate relationship situation and they go to a woman's refuge because it's their home where they're protected. And we take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Well, my home, I could just say something corny like, oh, my home is where the heart is. And it is, because it's always with me. And wherever I go, like a tortoise and its shell, I'm in that, just that, my home. But my home in terms of roof and walls and security, protection, if I'm laying under the stars on a rock near the sea outside, my home is the refuge of the Buddha, the Dharma and the Sangha. Because the Sangha I am part of, but the rest of the Sangha is what I rely on. The Sangha of bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, my senior monks, whom are my teachers, who are passing down through this lineage directly descending from the Buddha's teachings, these rules, which is why it's important we remind ourselves of them every 15 days by getting together with our other fellow bhikkhus. They're reminding me of this way of living, how to live safely for ourselves and safely for others, giving this wonderful gift, dana gift of fearlessness to all beings, so that the dogs don't bark at you and the geckos don't run away, and even the spiders are happy to crawl on you, and the mosquitoes like to have their breakfast, lunch and dinner and many meals in between from your blood. Talking to a monk friend who's just come back from Sri Lanka yesterday, and he was telling me about the leeches there, which I've had not much experience of leeches, fortunately, but that might be, if I end up going to Sri Lanka, a new thing for me to use as practice, the practice of harmlessly removing leeches as they suck your blood a lot more than as in the case of mosquitoes. So this is something that's coming soon for your enjoyment and entertainment, but not on the lunar observance days. We'll reserve that for Dharma, yes? And that is my refuge, this is my home, and it goes with me. Physically, my robes, which double as my bed, my sleeping bag, because he's just wrapped me up at night, because they're much bigger than they look when they're unrolled. And I have Sangeti, my old outer robe, the thicker one, which is over this shoulder usually, but that one is my, either I lay on it or an extra cover. And this little square sitting cloth is the same. Wherever I'm sitting, it's the same. It's, I suppose, 2 foot square, half a metre square piece of cloth. And this is my home, and all of my things, my 8 requisites, some of them are here. I mean, 2 of my robes, my lower robe, my upper robe, my outer robes in my kuti, my bowl, my pindapart, I have a belt, a needle and cotton and a water filter. They're only my official belongings. I also have borrowed this phone and this thing, the microphone, so I'm connected to you, but these are not really my necessary requisites, and they're just incidentals. Now, extra cloths were allowed, like this sitting cloth. We make a determination when we get it to use just this, an adhitthana, and we put 3 dots with a ink pen or paint in the corner. As we do that, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, making a determination that this is all we need. We're taking an extra cloth, this to sit on, like this. Is that important to us? We don't have 3 of these, one there and here, and this is it, my one sitting cloth. Yes. So we're very careful. I also have a nice little piece of cloth like that big. I use it to fold, like a handkerchief, but I use it to fold, and I put it over my cup of drink to stop the insects going in. And you can also use it to wipe out your bowl or whatever. Now, this is an extra cloth. Likewise, I make a determination that I'm taking this extra cloth as an extra requisite, but it is my only cloth. Now, with that, I can go anywhere. I pop a few things like my passport, and I do have a plastic card for emergencies to pay for things, which is not really having to use so much these days, fortunately, except when in India you can't use much online payments, so as you can in other countries, if you're foreign, that is. So the kapia uses that card to get some cash sometimes, like to get coffee or vegetables. But Uber, no problem, that was able to be done online and things like that. So I have a little bag called a yam, which I made out of another piece of cloth that was determined also, to keep passports, visas, any bits like that, and my toothbrush and the razor, which is the other one of our 8 requisites, goes in my yam. That yam pops into my bowl, my pindapart, and that's it. There's me, my sangati and robes, and my pindapart. Now, that is also my home. I mean, if I have this phone with me, which I generally do these days, that goes in the pindapart too, because even when it rains, it's okay in there, because that is always dry. It has a lid on top, so it stays dry. Otherwise, in this season, in this monsoon season, even just going a short distance, all electrical things would be ruined. So I have to be careful of them, because they're not always mine. I'm borrowing these things, so I put them in the bowl. So asking this question, where is your home? There is no answer. But then this is what we're chanting each and every day. That having gone forth, Chira Padini Bhutam Pitam Papada, I can't remember it all, but I've just chanted it this morning. Having gone forth from home to homelessness, we have these bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, it says, bhikkhus' rules of training to support us. We chant that every day, every morning. And if you listen tomorrow, you'll hear, I translate it into English. And this is reinforcing that idea that that is our home. We've gone from home to homelessness. So yes, home is where the heart is, but actually home is also wherever you are, if you take your home with you. And if you take your home to being your refuge in the triple gem, the Buddha, the Dharma and the Sangha, what better and safer home is there for anyone, especially if you're on your path towards Nibbana, freedom from suffering in this lifetime. So I should end this there, wishing you a very happy and enjoyable journey on this fruitful path towards Nibbana. To enjoy your practice, if you didn't this time, next time on the lunar observance day, or any day, at the weekend on your day off, think about just taking the 8 precepts just in your head to yourself. They're in the chanting book. If you have the chanting book, you can find them under taking 5, taking 10, or taking 8 precepts. Sorry, 5, 8, 10. And if you don't, I can send you the link. Just take, it's not that strict, you can just try it out, not having entertainment. Try not eating in the afternoon, and try sitting on the floor, as well as keeping the 5 precepts for just a day, and you'll see your meditation becomes less cluttered. The 5 hindrances, sensual desire, aversion, laziness, restlessness and worry, doubt, they're not so strong. You've weakened them at the foundations, you've weakened them at the roots, because you've taken away a lot of the distraction, a lot of the things that are the cause of sensual desire. The desire might be there, but you'd be mindfully seeing it arise and able to say, well, I've said for today I'm not doing that, so it'll go away in time. So this is the point of that. And then this extra layer of protection on your SILA, your 5 precepts, is giving strength to those foundations, because that's what these 5 precepts are, the foundations of our practice. No harm is the foundation to ourselves or others, is the foundation to our practice. Without that foundation, everything else is going to fall over. Meditation, wisdom, everything. You have to keep the precepts. Then you can meditate more easily. Then you will develop wisdom. It's just that. So if there's something useful there, I hope you can please use it. If not, then don't worry about it, don't think about it, don't let it bother you or anyone else, and just let it go. And finally, tonight there will be live guided meditation here at 6:30 Indian time, after the usual evening puja at 6 p.m. Indian time, where I'll be chanting the Anapanasati Sutta in order to give you a flavour for the meditation to follow. So I hope you can join me for that. Namaste, Namo Buddhaya. May you be happy and stay well.